Indeed, thank you so much. I think the session itself was so interesting, and we have been flooded with a lot of Q&As. I would urge you to, if you can just have a look at it, we can address them after the panel. In the meantime, we would wait for the panel to join in. For everyone else, we are about to start the panel discussion for the second session of today's Ground Zero 6.5. This would be a panel discussion which would be led by Mrigank, the partner at Redseer. Along with him would be the panelists, Mr. Dinkar, who heads the strategy at Flipkart, Mr. Siddhant Rana, who heads market development at Shopify for India and Southeast Asia. And they would also be the co-founder of CityMall, Mr. Angad. We would start the session in about a minute or so. So please stay tuned on this. Thank you so much. Mrigank, I think we can start in as soon as the panelists are in.
We're just waiting for Angad.
I see. Yes, we are. Hello, Mr. Dinkar. Hello, Mr. Rana. Pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Siddhant. Hi,
everyone. Very happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, I think Angad is also here. Hi, Angad.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All over to you, Mrigank.
Yep. Hey, hi. I'm Mrigank.
And thanks, Angad. I think Dinkar, if you could also turn on the video and let's get started with this session in the meantime.
Hey, sorry. Let me just try and...
Great. Maybe Dinkar, shall we get started? Yeah, maybe. So thanks everyone for joining in on this panel discussion around the new e-commerce segments. I think the first question of the blocks, and maybe Angad could take that up, is what is the on the ground sentiment regarding online consumption in the current scenario? Like, tell us some of the stories or things that you're seeing on the ground in the current sort of let's say inflationary scenario that people are talking about. And then also in the longer run, if you could give a view of what makes you so bullish about online consumption in India. Maybe just that context setting question to start off with.
For sure, Mrigank. Mrigank, thank you for having me in here. The sentiment largely for the online retail has been positive. In fact, due to the inflationary sort of pressures, we are also seeing a lot of our consumer base shifting to online because of that. Because the value proposition that the online brings, the sort of the value for money or the price competitiveness that the online brings is actually helping platforms like us to drive the adoption even forward. And that sort of keeps me positive about the fact that the online is by and large insulated compared to the macros that are going on right now. In fact, if anything, it's only acting for us in the positive direction.
Makes sense, Angad. Maybe jumping on the same question to you, Dinkar, obviously, larger Flipkart kind of a setup. Are you seeing a similar trend where there is a fair bit of insulation in demand trends?
Actually, it depends. Where there have been seller actions to take up pricing, then I think we've seen as in the demand correcting. But having said this, on the whole, we also see a variety of other customer behaviors. So, for example, on the consumer side of our business, as in the consumable side of our business, pack sizes are getting smaller. There's preferences for, as in down trading a little bit on the brand side. But yeah, so I wouldn't be as unequivocal as Angad was that has it impacted? It has impacted, but has it translated into a dramatic slowdown? Not yet, but it's playing through the platform in different ways. So there's a bit of down trading, downsizing of the products, what you buy. Some where sellers have taken up pricing, there's actually been impact there as well. So it's a lot more mixed and a lot more textured, but there has been an impact. Let me put it this way. It's not we haven't been fully insulated, but we're also, as in the scale's a little bit different at which we're talking about. I mean, we are quite a good barometer for consumer demand in the country as a whole.
Makes sense, Dinkar. And similar question, Siddhant, to you, but with us obviously slightly different twist, given that you work closely with some of the D2C brands / sellers. How do you see the story of demand change, or say on the ground demand panning out from that vantage point?
Yeah, I think this is, I wish I was a macroeconomist to be able to dive deep into this, but like my comments, I think I'm swinging towards more Angad on this one, because overall retail, if you look at it, like in India, it's about 1.1 trillion, right? So even, and that's been growing year on year, even if it doesn't, grow as much, maybe shrinks a little bit. Online as a percentage of that is still about 7-8%, right? And generally, I was looking at your presentation, it called out two very important things that online platforms are doing, right? Like we fuel a lot of the good offers and discounts, right? And if I look at, the convenience of online, it's far ahead of, say, offline, right? So in general, there's that cushion that we have in this industry, right? So definitely see online not being as impacted, and I'm quite bullish about the growth as well, right? Like you said, 60 billion is what you're projecting this year, right? We expect it to be somewhere in that mark, like maybe 10 billion more is what we are projecting, and then 2023 is when we are seeing potentially 100 billion mark as well, right? Like, and if you look at India as an economy, right, like we are quite insulated when it comes to the world versus, because we have a huge consumer base on our own. So those are some of the things that I think will carry us through this tumultuous time globally. And D2C, like I could go on.
Sure. I think why don't you maybe a couple of minutes, Siddhant? I think while we have other questions, but I think the D2C angle is an important one, given how we are also very bullish on that factor pushing up online demand. So maybe if you have some quick thoughts on that, how that is faring in terms of the demand trend.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the first wave of e-commerce in the country was driven by Flipkart. Really. And I think they're still at the cutting edge in terms of building the market. I think Amazon, Flipkart, all the big marketplaces have done a fantastic job of really teaching this country how to shop online, right? But I think one of the things that's been an offshoot of that has also been that the e-commerce market has grown, and as a result, a lot of categories now can support buying behavior online, which is more direct to consumer as well, right? So we've seen a lot of brands born in unique categories like gardening equipment, fitness accessories, fashion jewelry, which you would have never expected somebody come online and buy directly from a brand, right? A website. We're seeing that happen, right? During the last 2 years with COVID, we've seen a 3x growth in merchant base on Shopify. So it's something that we've seen really grow over the last few years. We always tell brands and merchants to set up their online store, needless to say, because they get the flexibility to send out their message the way they want to. It's more profitable, and they get feedback faster because they can talk to their customers, and that really results in better products overall, right? So I think that's been one of the drivers behind D2C. And we are not only seeing these new age D2C brands that are doing this, we're also seeing some of the traditional brands, right? Whether it's the likes of Euroflex, Neelkamal, Intex, Symphony, all of whom were definitely focusing on their offline, but now they realize the importance of having their own channel as well online, right? And we've seen them use some of our enterprise offerings as a result, right? So definitely very interesting. I think just to round off, I think Omni is here to stay. We don't need to argue about that. D2C is here to stay, I think, as well. And I feel the next trend is going to be consumers shopping everywhere, right? Not just because your consumers are everywhere. They're not just on marketplaces or going to be visiting your online store. They're going to be spending time on social platforms, which is why social commerce is picking up in a big way. They're going to be spending time on publications, and they will want those buying journeys everywhere. So I think that's where we see an opportunity in terms of enabling brands and merchants to be able to sell across these multiple touch points, right? So yeah, that's my longish rant. Sorry for that.
No, very interesting points. No doubt we see the similar trend when in our work on the brands as well. The willingness to digitize and serve multiple touch points that has just gone up exponentially compared to 2 or 3 years ago. So I think we pretty much align with what you're saying. Dinkar, maybe now coming to you on a separate question. I think you earlier made an interesting point about consumers sort of down trading in certain categories. So how do you see this aligned with, let's say, the social commerce initiative that Flipkart has been running with Shopsy? Obviously, it's still early days, but I'm sure at some level it is playing a critical role in digitizing both the supply of sellers who would be sort of getting activated on that platform, plus the customers as well, of who may not be so comfortable or even sort of in a down trading mode. What are some of the new things that Shopsy has enabled the Flipkart group to do? And secondly, what are some of the backend synergies that allow it to operate very efficiently within the group?
That's a great question. Just before getting to Shopsy, see, broadly, our belief is that, and you guys track these numbers all the time, India's got what? 190, 200 million e-commerce shoppers across all platforms, across everything basically. And our internet user base in India is several times that. So there is this and so the 500-600 million people who are on the internet or even more, they're doing something on there. Some of them are actually visiting all the e-commerce properties. They may not necessarily be transacting in any particular year, but they're out there on the internet and active, and they're engaged, so to speak. They're not necessarily transacting. And I think for us, that's a huge priority as to how do we plug this gap? How do we grow this 200 million shopper number, give or take, to actually come as close to the internet user number in India? And that's the journey, which I think China is actually much closer. So Alibaba's number would be 900 million plus on a 1 billion something population of internet users. In the US, it's closer to 75-77% if you were to compare Amazon as the parameter. In India, it would be like whatever, 25%, 30%. That's probably the number we are at right now. So that's an exercise which needs to happen. And the way we plug the gap is actually the focus of your first part of the presentation as well. It's about actually translating a lot of engagement which people have outside of commerce into transactions. And I think there's a social dynamic whereby people obviously, so if you were to back up, one of the big barriers, we do a lot of research and have been doing it for several years. What stops people from buying online? Trust is actually a big driver. And the greatest way to get around trust is actually the social network. So when it also acts as an endorsement of products or sellers you choose to do business with, but also if the social network brings you onto commerce as an online from a shopping standpoint, and that's actually been a big valuable, that helps overcome the trust barrier. So that's one big dimension of it. The second dimension, and this narrowly talks to about video, and it's got two parts to it. I think video creates new occasions to purchase. And I think if you studied how it played out in China with all Douyin and whatnot, it unlocks new purchase occasions, which is massively valuable. It's an existing user, but a new purchase occasion. But it also, if it's actually influencer led, is a little bit of helping overcome the barrier of trust. So it actually brings new classes of users out there. So video is actually quite critical as well. And then there'll progressively be other such top of the funnel interventions, which will enable us to actually plug the gap between, let's say, the 200 versus for the 700. Now, narrowly with respect to Shopsy's are it's our value platform, plus it's also our reseller platform. We have hundreds of thousands of resellers active on Shopsy who actually take the product and give it to their network, so to speak. It's incidentally so that the customer segments we are operating in are also seeking value, which is why I think these two can sit together at Shopsy at one point of time, at this point of time. But yeah, it's actually getting us a new set of customers who were outside of this 200. I think not all of the 200 million, as in Shopsy is not 100% of new customers. It's got a set of existing e-commerce guys from elsewhere actually shopping there, which is perfectly fine. But yeah, it's about actually tapping into this new customer set who are outside of the 200 through the reseller network, so to speak, while simultaneously also we've got a set of our existing customers who tend to actually, as in we've got customers who buy both on Flipkart and on Shopsy at the same time. So that happens as well, and which is perfectly fine. So that's the model of how we're imagining Shopsy to grow. And the runway is enormous. As I said, all of these fish in the 200 to 700 million users in India, and the runway is enormous there.
Got it. I think a follow-up question to you, or say rather shifting the spotlight to Angad on this similar lines. Angad, so Dinkar talked about that, plugging that gap between 200 to 700 million. Of course, something like a platform like CityMall is of course also focused on. So maybe a two-part question to you, Angad. I think maybe if you could just walk us through some of the pivots or changes around the business model. Maybe talk about how CityMall is approaching this problem statement. So that's part one. Part two, again, given the current funding climate, how do you think about what are the key metrics that are getting to be more important in the next few months or quarters in this kind of climate from an investor point of view to make the models more sustainable? So maybe those two questions to you.
Sure. Yeah, so like Dinkar mentioned, there's a huge gap between people who are on the internet versus people who are buying online. And if we take another cut on people who are actively, meaningfully buying online, if we remove the really low frequency purchase users, this number becomes a small fraction of what Dinkar just mentioned. So the gap is, in my opinion, is even larger than what we currently see between 150 to 600-700. And that's exactly the problem that we are tackling, Mrigank. So we focus on these consumers living in these really small towns and villages in India. A lot of these towns you may or may not have heard, towns like Rewari, Sonipat, Panipat, Muzaffarnagar, Faizabad. So those are the towns that we focus on. Almost 80-85% of our consumers are completely new to e-commerce. They've not transacted on any other e-commerce. So it's really about unlocking a very different type of a customer base than the one that currently meaningfully transacts on e-commerce platforms. And when we dive deeper on why is it that this customer base has remained untouched by the e-commerce wave and the geo wave that came mentioned is the social trust. So that's a big problem to solve. How do you get a user to come and transact on your platform? And it usually, with our data and research, we see that it takes about 5 to 6 transactions for a user to be regularly transacting online. So that chasm of a user knowing about your platform to her making 5-6 transactions to be regular on your platform is a long barrier of trust. And there are sort of elements around your logistics, return, refund processes, customer support that needs to be extremely strong during that period for that user. So that's one problem to solve. And the other one, which is extremely structural in the economy, is now these users come from low mid-income consumer groups. I think your presentation also showed a lot of them were sub 20,000-25,000 rupee household incomes, and which means that their wallet balances are almost always extremely low, and hence their average order values are very low. So we are talking about users placing 300-400 rupee orders. Right now, how do you build a supply chain that directly delivers these extremely low order values to users who by default do not trust you as much is the exact problem that we are solving, Mrigank. And our solve for this is we sort of leverage these local influencers, these micro entrepreneurs who we call community leaders, who solve for both of these aspects, which is the problem of trust, social proof, and assistance on one side, and also acting as our logistics partners and a point where demand aggregation happens. So these are the guys who would be sort of aggregating multiple 300 rupee orders, so that when we do the logistics, we do it more sustainably. Not only that, what we've sort of discovered now, and this was not by design, but this is something that we discovered, is that these users end up providing credit to the end consumers as well. This is a very informal form of credit, udhar, very informal. We don't do it from our as our platform, but because these are entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs, they extend credit to the end consumers to get more and more of their wallet shares. And that's what makes the model even more interesting. You're not only solving the problem of trust and social proof, and logistics, but you're also solving the problem of credit through these micro entrepreneurs. Big learning for us, Mrigank, has been that as you go deeper down into these small towns in rural India, the opportunities to earn income are extremely limited. So they are sort of limited by opportunities, then limited by their hunger to sort of earn. And that's exactly what we're leveraging. We are leveraging the latent entrepreneurial energy that India has through these micro entrepreneurs to make e-commerce work and sustainably work in these smaller and rural areas.
Very interesting points, Angad, especially around the credit part of it. I think that's something that none of us really thought of when thinking of the social commerce element. So, Angad, before I ask you to answer the other question on the fundraising situation, maybe I'll jump on a follow-up question to the Siddhant, perhaps. I think Siddhant, we saw that Shopify in India has been sort of taking up multiple initiatives to sort of activate sellers, giving them more options, more flexibility to reach out to the customers in the way the customers want. And I think we noted the ability to sell via YouTube, the video channel via YouTube. So maybe if you could just walk through what are some of these innovations that localizations Shopify has been doing, firstly, and then the video component. I think what is the thought process behind and any impact that you are seeing from the sellers once you have allowed them to kind of plug into the video commerce solutions.
Right. Yeah, I think very interesting space, right? So we've been doing things both on the social side as well as video side, right? I think like when it comes to the YouTube partnership, I'll just jump in there because that's what you raised first. We've already been seeing commerce happening there, right? But a lot of the way in which it happens is you go there for validation, you'll check a review and you'll consume some content and learn more about a product. And then either you'll go back to a marketplace or there may be a link that the creator might have put in there in the description where you click and you complete your commerce journey. So that is something that Google recognized early on as a trend. And we partnered with them to launch a plugin which basically helps most merchants and creators to make that shopping journey more frictionless, right? So now what you can do is if you're a Shopify merchant and a YouTube partner and you meet like there are some criteria that YouTube has around being enabled for monetization as well as having a base minimum set of subscribers. But if you meet those criteria, you can use the plugin to easily and quickly sync your products right into YouTube. And instead of like having those links to be redirected, you would actually have like a full commerce journey enabled on a YouTube video or a video on demand. It could be a live video, or it could even be one of the new shorts, right, that YouTube has released. And what this results in is a more frictionless experience for your buyers, right? It's another place in which they are consuming content and learning about your products, and they can right from there just buy and check out, right? So that's what we've been able to do. The value we add is obviously, they just need to be able to set up their store initially and manage all of it through their admin. So it's frictionless for the merchants as well. It's not just for the buyers, but for the merchants as well. So that's one thing that's happening on YouTube. Another thing that we've done and what we've seen is that platforms like WhatsApp, there's a lot of commerce there as well, right? And the whole journey of commerce happens there, whether it's pre, whether it's due the purchase or post, right? And we've launched with a partner, Interact, a WhatsApp sales channel, which basically allows that to happen, where your catalog gets synced, you're able to send out that conversational commerce journey and enable it for your brand and check out, right? And all while still managing your business from within Shopify, right? So these have been some interesting things that we've done on the video and the social side. I think it's very interesting to see the space evolve, and we're looking forward to helping more and more creators, more and more merchants really build a solid business and reach economic independence, right?
Yeah. Very interesting points, Siddhant. I think we do see that the growth of the online seller base, rather democratization of the online seller base, that will be a key role in propelling this market to that 100 billion number that we are talking about. So initiatives like this, I think, will be a crucial part of this journey. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Maybe I think we are slightly short of time, so maybe just two last questions for the panel. Maybe second last question for Dinkar. I think maybe on the quick commerce aspect. Obviously, I think we have spoken about it in today's discussion. So that how does it enable, or how is it beneficial rather to have a quick commerce entity within a larger group? What is the thought process, let's say, for a Flipkart Quick to be integrated within the broader group? And of course, even the core delivery proposition of Flipkart is already pretty fast. So how does one think of the speed constructs and the value propositions for different customer cohorts that might be transacting on the Flipkart platform?
So if you just back up for a second, how do consumers buy? And slightly grocery-centric framing, but at least the way we think of consumer shopping missions are, you've got planned missions, as in which in the grocery world might actually be a stock-up mission. And that could be planned missions for non-grocery stuff, as only buy a TV, you buy a fridge. You have what we call top-up missions, so which are essentially, milk is a classic example. You need it daily, you need a top-up daily. It's not a planned mission per se. It is planned, but it's not planned as well. And then you've got these ad hoc missions, which are essentially impulse missions. So now, Quick in India has actually, around the world, in fact, if you ask me, has actually largely been centered on the ad hoc mission. So as an impulsive mission, you need something, you get something. The challenge with Quick, and as the rest of the world is finding, and if you look at the what's happening with Quick players in the Western world, UK and the US, you'll find that so the unit economics are quite tightly related to density, as in you need to have very dense demand for you to be able to profitably serve the customer at such high speeds. So essentially you'll have your dark store and you need to run your dark store to full utilization, which requires you to get quite deeply penetrated in the whatever 5, 10, 15, 30, whatever be your service level, that radius, which is proving to be a challenge, in most geographies of the world, and we per se are not surprised. So in the grand scheme of things, I think it's going to be a convenience fee which will play its way into the Quick dimension at some point of time, and like it did, for example, in food delivery, there's a convenience fee which consumers pay, and that's when the Quick businesses would actually be fundamentally sustainable. So that's I think the aggregate view on Quick. From a Flipkart standpoint, for us, Quick is actually another level. It's a service level. So for our customers, if they need, as in some need stuff next day, some need stuff 11/11, as in we have various service level offerings we offer to our customers, and Quick will continue to be one such service level. It's as in the products which we offer, there's obviously not the entire selection can be on Quick. A subset of it is on Quick. And we're seeing good uptick and good movement actually for selection, which is on Quick. It helps that we also did a campaign and that also triggered a bunch of traffic and demand for Quick on our platform. But yeah, the Quick will be an integral part of how we address our customers. Structurally, a Quick only business, I think, will require convenience fee to be sustainable, similar to how the food delivery dynamics have played out. But that will be my 2 cents on Quick, yeah.
Fair enough. Maybe the last question to round off things for Angad. I think obviously something very topical. Obviously, I think we are talking about the funding winter and all that stuff. Investors looking at unit economics. So as someone building out I would say slightly early stage business, solving very new problems, I think, how are you thinking of, let's say, talking about unit economics or sustainability in the next few quarters? What innovations do you see happening there to make the company just much more efficient? And I'm sure investors ask that question all the time, right? Especially in the current scenario. So everyone needs to be fit for that. So how are you thinking about that sustainability factor in the quarters to come?
Sure. So Mrigank, so if we zoom out, there are sort of 2 aspects to what we are building. One is the fact that we're unlocking a completely new customer segment, and making sure that sort of we continue. So that is one key thing that our conversations to existing and new investors are sort of focused on. That there's a very new customer segment, and then we are seeing extremely strong product market fit. So that's one aspect of our discussions with investors. But the second one, which you just mentioned, which is around sustainability, profitability. You have fundamentally the model that we are building, which is community-based e-commerce. It's fundamentally more efficient than any other e-commerce business. Two of the biggest cost elements, which is the cost of marketing and the cost of logistics, both of them get significantly disrupted through this alternate channel of community leaders. So that's sort of one area around sustainability, which is very inherent to the model that we are building. In terms of the steps that we are taking, one of it is that so we haven't sort of expanded pan-India, and that's not been our strategy. So our expansion strategy is sort of expanding adjacently, then sort of discretely in different areas. The way quick commerce or other models expand. So for example, we are just in 2 states, which is the state of Haryana and the state of UP. And the entire strategy is around building more and more density of community leaders, more consumers per community leader to sort of drive the supply chain efficiencies in. So that's sort of one aspect of sort of proving the economics on the model, which is important. And the second aspect around it, Mrigank, is that pure play vertical platform delivering to consumers in small town and rural areas may not be sort of profitable, or there will be profitability challenges there. And our strategy is around sort of building more verticals and sort of horizontalizing the existing platform. I was also looking at the presentation that you just made, and there are adjacent categories like home, kitchen that are extremely underpenetrated, especially in the segments that we are in. And those are the category-led expansions that we are making to make not only sort of supply chain more dense, but also more creating more profit pools around those categories. So that's largely what we're doing here.
Great. Thanks for the insights, Angad. I think we are maybe just 2 minutes running behind our schedule, but thank you, Angad. It's been a very engaging, interesting discussion, bringing up some of these new points that I think are quite pertinent to the growth of new commerce in India. Thanks a lot for your time. I'm sure there's much more questions to discuss, but I think we probably pause here. Thanks everyone.